Up front, this is a story spoiler-free review of Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, the Pokemon games that I suppose we've been waiting for a year. So is it worth it? Well, my firm opinion is that if you haven't played the original Pokemon Sun or Moon, then you should definitely check the Ultra games out, as it does make some improvements. I'm not saying it's a must-play, but it's a pretty straightforward upgrade from Sun and Moon. But is it worth all of the hype it got? And if you played Sun and Moon, is it worth picking up Ultra so soon? That's what we're discussing today. Also, I don't have a 3DS capture card, and if I use the trailers, Nintendo will strike this video, so you get to see a lot of me this time! Yay! Also, disclaimer, big thank you to Nintendo for sending me these games early so that I could get this review out on time. So straight away, let's talk general specs. Just to get all of that out of the way. The cutscenes seem to run a bit smoother, and the lighting seems to be a bit more deep, but the game still starts to lag and lose frames during the larger battles, and sometimes even just the boss battles. Even on the new 3DS, which I used, personally, I wouldn't really enjoy this as much if I were on the old 3DS. They updated a few bits of the UI for the better. It all got a fresh coat of paint, so to speak. The buttons pop more now, and it's overall much more aesthetically pleasing. The menu seemed to be a bit more organized, and they added a press Y to save from the pause menu option, which doesn't sound like much, but it actually saves a lot of time and button presses, which just adds to the fact that the new UI is like a breath of fresh air. In fact, it took me quite a bit to start actually using the quick save feature, so I guess old habits die hard. Now onto the meat of the game, the story and content. Does it actually differ from the old game, or is it just a $40 update? I would say overall, Ultra Sun and Moon is bigger than Sun and Moon. They added quite a bit of new stuff to up the replayability, so to speak. Though I did hear that while they added new areas, they also removed some of the older ones. I don't know if that's been confirmed or not, but I've heard rumors. But while I was playing, I never felt like anything was missing, so I guess I was well distracted. There are new trial captains, and a few of the Totem Pokemon and trials are different too, but we've seen all the trailers, so let's get into what really makes this game better. Or worse. On top of the new trial captains, some of the trials have been revamped, either by replacing certain Pokemon or completely changing the puzzle elements involved. One major revamp that I really enjoyed is during the Second Island trial with Mallow. You were once required to use Stoutland's find abilities, and that has been changed for a much more challenging puzzle instead of seek and find busy work. A lot of the trial changes are certainly for the better, no longer just something to sink your time into. They're actually a good bit of fun now. There are a few more changes to the rest of the trials, from changing the Totem Pokemon to changing the puzzle completely, so there's definitely something for someone who's played the original game before. Unfortunately though, not all of the trials were changed. Some of them were exactly the same, and it's boring. Speaking of trials and Totem Pokemon, the new Ultra games allow you to actually obtain your own Totem-sized Pokemon. I know, right? Who doesn't want a 60-kilogram rat? To receive your large Pokemon, you need to collect Totem stickers. These stickers are pretty much scattered everywhere. Even if you don't look for them, you'll see them sparkling on houses or even in circles of Murkrows. They essentially replace the Zygarde cells that were in the first Sun and Moon. Once you reach the second island, you'll be approached by good old Samson Oak, and he'll explain that after you collect a certain amount of them, you can then obtain a very large Pokemon. And as for the Totem Pokemon fights, their difficulty was all over the place, either a complete cakewalk, or they had annoying mechanics that just made the fight long and boring, like using their healing moves 15 turns in a row. They go from 10% health to full health, and your strongest attack only deals 90% of their health. Just 15 turns of attack, heal, attack, heal, attack, heal. I don't have all day. And as soon as the totem's out of power points, just boom, it's dead. That's not fun, that's not hard, that's long and time consuming. One aspect I do like is how they made it somewhat harder in some parts, but made up for it in other ways. I'm not saying the game was hard, of course, it's Pokemon, but it wasn't always easy, so to speak. Some of the story changes added in Pokemon trainers that are actually fairly difficult, though these trainers are still plagued with the "even though you're near the end of the game, I only have one Pokemon" problem. At least now though, compared to Sun and Moon, there are fewer of them. Most trainers have at least 2 or 3, but that's still nowhere close to a full team. Yes, there are always outliers, but I would still say that they were a good bit of fun, adding in a bit of challenge for once. And I'm not sure how I feel about this, but those trainers, the few that are actually somewhat challenging, they actually ask you if you're ready to fight before they start combat. On one hand, that makes the game still easy, you know, oh, this trainer's gonna be tough, I better go and heal everything so I can just guarantee a win again. I don't know, I guess it's an accessibility issue. Some people just aren't good at Pokemon, because menus are hard to read. But even then, the game does balance out that extra bit of difficulty by something called the Roto Loto, or the Roto Lotto. Probably that one. In which sometimes your Rotom Dex will ask you questions after points in the story, and after you answer, its eyes will flash like a rainbow, and when you click on it, the Roto Loto will happen, and it'll randomly give you something that you can use once in a battle. A higher catch rate, a temporary boost in all of your stats, a Roto Potion, and what basically acts as a repel, but it's free, and the Roto happens after basically every major plot point, so it happens a lot. But thankfully you aren't forced into them, so if you want to make the game a bit harder, you don't have to go out of your way too much. Other small minigame things that they added were like the Mantine Surfing. The game is in its name. You surf on a Mantine while traveling between the islands. While in the air, you can pull off different tricks depending on which direction you pull the stick, and the more stylish you are, the more points you get. You can then spend those points on items, such as protein and iron, or you can use them on teaching your Pokemon new moves. The actual surfing itself is pretty fun. Building up the speed and watching the backsplash turn from white to orange to white and orange, it's all very satisfying. And so is pulling off the tricks themselves, although those dang tentacles are really annoying. Another huge feature was the Lola Photo Club. It lets you take photos of your character with one Pokemon, and you can customize pretty much everything about it. It's pretty much a in-Pokemon universe version of Snapchat. And speaking of Snapchat, and cute outfits, Ultra Sun and Moon has added a ton of new outfits and accessories to the game, which my wife absolutely loved. Alright, and I did too. What my wife says is the cutest outfit makes your character look like a Lurantis, but each outfit piece is between 500,000 and 700,000 Poké Dollars. Like, what the heck, in-game vendor people? How are you expecting 11-year-olds to get that kind of moolah? I mean, it's no EA level of crap, but even after you beat the base game, saving money all the way through because they hand out revives and potions like nobody's business, you still don't have enough to buy even one piece of the outfit. It's a little ridiculous. But you want story, right? Well, I'm not going to spoil anything that hasn't been in trailers and such, but I will give you my opinion on the story. So the intro is about the same. It does feel a little bit faster than Sun and Moon just because you don't have to chat with Kukui for ages, but besides that, the beginning of the game is 90% the same, besides Lily's character being a little less terrified. The story progresses at a fairly slow pace, the same as Sun and Moon. The addition of the recon team is nice, and you meet them rather early on, and they are regularly adding bits and bobs of information and story. They're funny, and it's actually rather interesting to learn more about the dimension they come from. The only problem I have with Game Freak's adding of them to the story is the way in which they are implemented. A lot of times, Game Freak seems to not trust players' ability to understand nuanced situations unless they pretty much slap you in the face with information. They all too often fall into the trap of telling you information instead of showing it to you. A lot of Ultra Recon Squad's lines don't feel like conversation. They feel more like a grade schooler writing a play for the first time, and it often comes off as very poor writing. They're very stiff. That's pretty much that. They're very stiff. Maybe that was intentional because in their dimension, people are stiff all the time. Maybe. Either way, it didn't sound good. It didn't come across well enough if that was their intention. And Rainbow Rocket doesn't even come into the story until the very, very end. Which is good in a way, I suppose, because then the game isn't throwing a billion bad guys at you all at once, but on the flip side, this means Rainbow Rocket's story is shallow. Way more shallow than I wanted out of them, and it left me legitimately disappointed, the most disappointed I've ever been in a Pokemon game. And that is saying something. I mean, that was the only aspect I was really hyped about, and it's the last time I'm letting myself get hyped about Pokemon. Until Pokemon on the Switch, at least. The Aether Foundation's role is a bit different during the events of this new game, which is good. The old twist isn't a twist anymore, so I'm glad that they dropped it and let it be. But not having that makes the story feel like it falls flat, in my opinion. Sure, there are changes here and there, but it's really just another generic story now. Significantly more generic than Sun and Moon was. They didn't innovate or change the formula. I mean, the Ultra Megatropolis was rather cool looking, but it was limited to a single corridor of map. And plus, I think Rainbow Rocket's whole story waters down Lucamine's character a bit. A bit too much, even. She's not as interesting anymore. I mean, even if you didn't like the story of Sun and Moon, you still have to agree that Lucamine was a very strong villain, a rather well thought out one by Pokemon standards. And they removed that. Final thoughts on the game? It's another Pokemon game. It's no Black and White 2, it's no Emerald or Platinum either, but I'd say it is a definite improvement over the original games in terms of mechanics and content. The story, however, is stronger in some points, but overall weaker. It feels like they added Rainbow Rocket and the Ultra Metropolis, and even just the ending story bit, that's a spoiler, just as a means of hyping you up so that you would buy the game. They didn't flesh any of it out. It's all very short and very shallow. They added it just so that they have an excuse to make you buy the game again. So if you didn't like Sun and Moon, you won't like these either. It fixes almost none of the problems. If you kinda liked Sun and Moon, these do improve upon them, but is that worth playing a whole chunk of it again? That's up for you to decide. And if you really liked Sun and Moon, then hey, you can enjoy your $40 upgrade. Objectively, I give Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon a 7.5 out of 10. It's an average Pokemon game with some steps in the right direction regarding difficulty, but overall, it's average for a Pokemon game. Subjectively, I give it a 6 out of 10. I feel like it should have been $20 DLC. Everything they hyped up is actually minuscule in the game, and I'm happy to never have to touch it again. Playing through Sun and Moon pretty much a second time, I feel like was not worth my time. I shouldn't feel that way after playing a Pokemon game. While the few actually challenging battles were fun, they were merely pebbles on the path of this cakewalk of a game. This slow cakewalk full of long, drawn-out cutscenes. But the world building and the story is still awesome. I mean, it's Pokemon. That's like my favorite part of Pokemon, and that aspect of it's still great. If only the gameplay could keep up with the amazing everything else. So if you've played Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, what are your thoughts? Do you agree or disagree with me, and why? Try being not just subjective, but also objective, and let me know your thoughts down below. And if you like this t-shirt of Solgaleo as an alchemical lion, links are in the description. It's super cool. And now it looks like I have a beard. What a weird way to end a video. Toodles.